This video is the first of a series of 5 called Chant is Elementary Music Literacy. What is elementary music literacy? It is the skill to read music that we have not yet heard on the page, also called sight singing, at its most elementary level. What is chant? It's a cappella singing in unison with the rhythm of speech. It is most usually heard in churches. 2 examples can be seen here on the screen. Chant and elementary music literacy are integrated with each other. There is a need in elementary music literacy. This recent workshop by the National Association of Pastoral Musicians filled out very quickly. We church musicians first have to face a paradox. The piano, which is the rehearsal instrument most commonly used in church choirs, is not useful to teach elementary sight singing. And here is why. Singers have a gift that I'm illustrating here. They can transpose. Pianos cannot. These letters illustrate the music theory a pianist needs to play these 12 3-note sequences. To sing the same 12-note sequences, a singer only needs to know do, re, mi. Do, re, mi. Do, re, mi. Those are 2 of the 12 sequences. This just do, re, mi. Ignoring that gift is a very common mistake made by teachers of elementary music literacy. Why? Because most teachers are instrumentalists, and that's the way they learn. I'm not saying that piano is not useful. I'm saying the piano is useful as a yardstick, a reference, very much the same way they used an instrument called the monochord many years before the piano was invented. But solfège, do, re, mi, is the historical method to teach music literacy to singers. It was invented 800 years before the piano, and it is very quick and efficient. How do I translate quick and efficient at the parish level? Well, I can witness firsthand that without piano, but with solfège, chant, and a book called The Roman Gradual, in 18 months, with only 2 rehearsals per month, we went from just me cantoring to all these beautiful people able to sing a cappella simple masses, and with a little bit of help, sing high mass with all the proper from the Roman Gradual. To understand why the Roman Gradual is so efficient, history helps. For the next 7 minutes, we'll go over some history because it gives us a very useful perspective. Then I'll finish this video by introducing 3 teachers which are very successful that use in their modern language, very much they teach the same thing that history taught us, but in a 21st century language. But the idea of the sound being in your head before you can identify the sign is part of a historic reality. So let's go to the 11th century. Singing in worship was an oral tradition. It was passed from master to pupil. In the 9th century, it took about 20 to 30 years to train a cantor for the liturgy. So Guido d'Arezzo, we'll call him Guido, was a monk. In the 11th century, who wrote 4 books about teaching music. In one book, he called singers fools because they spend so much time memorizing music. We have an expression in English, singing from the same song sheet, when Guido invented the song sheet. But first he invented solfège, so a singer can sing syllables with an open vowel on each note and learn the relationship between these notes. Without movement, there is no music. Movement is that relationship between the notes.
When you read, you begin with
A, B, C.
When you sing, you begin with do, re, mi.
Do, re, mi.
Do, re, mi. The first 3 notes just happen to be do, re, mi.
Do, re, mi.
Guido will disagree with just happen to be because he invented do, re, mi. How did he do that? 300 years before Christ, the Greeks had noticed a mathematical proportion between the notes of a pleasant melody. The tool they used to measure those proportions was a monochord, the instrument here in the drawing. The proportion 2 to 1 allowed a man and a boy to sing together what a third person will hear as the same melody, what we now call singing at the octave. The proportion of 3 to 2 also was found to be the relationship governing the grade of a scale of 6 notes used in many popular melodies. Gamma, A, B, C, D, Musicians knew that the step between gamma, A, B were the same as C, D, D, E, and the only exception was between B and C. There was a symmetry in the proportion between before B and after C. The exception between B and C was a half step. So singers were using that half step as a point of reference. So Guido's big idea was to put the scale of 6 notes, which was accepted by all as truth, the 3s and 2s, into the head of the singers. If he noticed that in a hymn most singers knew, called Utque Antlaxis, the 6th grade started the 6 first lines. So he renamed the grades Ut, re, mi, fa, sol, la, first the first syllable of each line. And he gave the singers an audio library that they could mentally organize without the instrument, the monochord. They had the hymn, not they had the scale. Now, a scale of 6 notes is of course limited. Let's call those 6 notes a hexachord. But since the first 3 and the last 3 notes of the 6 in the hexachord are in symmetry, it's possible to put those hexachords back to back, as long as we hinge on the middle interval, which is where the half step is. Remember, with 2 full steps, 2 full step, and a half step in the middle. So the singers will keep thinking in their head with 6 notes, but the director will indicate, thanks to the table on the right here, which hexachords we were singing in. This system was called the whole gamut because the first scale of 6 had a gamma correspond to ut. Gamma, ut, whole gamut. You heard it first here. Now, that's how the sound came before the sign. The sign was the hand. Before Guido, there were already song sheets with words and mnemonic sign indicating if the melody went up or down and other phrasing, like the page in the top left. And these signs were neumes. But Guido added the lines to grade the melody. Now all singers not only knew if it went up, but it knew if it went up 1 step, 2 steps, or 2 steps and a half. Remember, the key for the singer was to find the half step. Once the singer had the half step, he knew he had 2 full steps above and 2 full steps under. So initially the lines where the half step were had a different color. On the manuscript, the half step were indicated by red and yellow. Then by the time of this sheet on the left, they already also had added some black lines in between, very colorful. And then printing came, and colorful lines were no longer an option. So the key signature of fa and do became the sign for singers of where the half step was. So Guido's invention, solfege and the 4-line chant notation became the cornerstone of music literacy for singers. That is still true today. This music literacy for singers was practiced in the Christian liturgies from the 11th to the 19th century, as illustrated here through what was called a lectern, or in French, a lutrin, which designates both the piece of furniture and the group of people singing together. Instruments were for kings and princes. The people were singing like this. Whether we are in Greek antiquity in the 11th century or now, we all have an audio library of sound, whether it's the lullabies we heard when we were babies or songs that we like on the radio. Solfege is the historic method in the Western world to organize these sounds and make a connection between these sounds and put them in our head to be able to read signs on the page. The sounds are first, signs come later. And then in music theory comes even later, especially with rhythm. Music theory became a lot more complicated when after the invention in the 14th century of the mechanical clock, because now rhythm was subdivided. It was no longer God's time that was given to us, it was something, a material that we could subdivide. And that became music theory, which was a lot more complicated. Now we can still learn subdivided rhythm after we learn solfege and melodies and the proportionality of melodies. Now this video is over, but I'll present now very quickly 4 sequels to this video, which take us to hear teachers of the 21st century who do not use chant teach very much the same thing that we just heard. That was the historic church method. The 2 first videos I propose are excerpts from a brilliant 1-hour lecture by Talia Sheehan. It's from a liturgical perspective. Music, the first excerpt is music is not just ornamental, it is mystagogical. In very simple words, Thalia explains why the incremental process of learning to sing in church is like the process of sanctification. The words incremental, gradual, scaffolding are all related. The church has always trained her musicians until recently, and she explains why that training of singers is integral to the mission of the church. In the second excerpt, she explains modern hurdles to singing from a liturgical perspective. In short, we're rich and we are afraid. We are afraid that our singing will not meet the high expectations of our wealth. This is an unparalleled situation in history. You really won't want to miss that second excerpt. It's our third video in this series. This episode 4 is an interview of Carol Kruger. Carol Kruger is an authority when it comes to teaching sight singing to university students. She goes around the country and gives remedial classes. She explains how sound must come before signs. And episode 5 is another sum up of the Chorosophy podcast, in which he demonstrates to a choral convention in Colorado the a cappella rehearsal. This was his most popular 2023 episode, and it really shows the similarities of teaching sight singing to high school students with the historical perspective of the church, even though they're using different notation system. I really hope you'll watch those videos too. Thank you for watching this one.